Hey, Dr. Brook here with another epic, amazing interview with a co-pilot, Matthew Leising, for Dr. Brook on the Block. Welcome. Matt has been a reporter since 2001 and for the past 17 years has been with Bloomberg News. He's been covering crypto in 2015 as one of the first mainstream journalists to understand what the breakthrough of blockchain technology could mean for finance, culture, and industry in general. His expertise lies in the Ethereum blockchain, where he knows the people who invented and then built the world's most used blockchain. I want to get into that a little bit more through this episode, but we'll talk about that. He's written extensively on the intersection of Wall Street and decentralized finance and how new peer-to-peer systems can change the way the current internet works. He's one of the foremost experts on the DAO, which, if you've listened to past episodes, DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, I defined that for you. We went into depth about that. The early and ill-fated DeFi experiment in Ethereum that was hacked to the tune of $55 million in 2016. This all culminated into his 2020 book, Out of the Ether, The Amazing Story of Ethereum, and the $55 million heist that almost destroyed it all. Welcome to the show, Matt. So excited you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brooke. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So for my listeners, the first question I always ask is what your intro story is into the Web3 world. We got a little bit of the background, but from being a reporter in Bloomberg for 17 years, how did you get to the point in which you were in the crypto space?
Yeah, I was reporting on Wall Street, and I knew that the banking system pretty well. I was covering a beat that we called market structure. So it was like, how do markets work? How do they not work? What's the regulation going on? How are people trying to update things? Are there, scams or frauds, or who are regulators going after you? All that stuff. And so I had a pretty good sense of it. I went through the financial crisis at Bloomberg and watched all of that happen, and then covered the Dodd-Frank Act, that was the legislation put in place afterwards to regulate things like the over-the-counter derivatives markets and do a whole bunch of other changes to the U.S. financial system. So all that was my background. And in 2015, Bitcoin had already been around for a few years, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But I finally read something in The Economist that explained the blockchain part of the equation. And then once I realized, it's a network of computers, and they just happen to be spread all over the world, and it's unstoppable, I realized that Wall Street is kind of the same way. It's just a big network as well. I mean, everyone knows each other because you're counterparties and you're trading trillions of dollars, every day amongst all these different parts of the financial world, like banks and asset managers and hedge funds and all that stuff. So it kind of clicked for me that if the blockchain was just a network of computers, Wall Street was also a network, and maybe Wall Street could kind of import some of these ideas and start experimenting with what the blockchain had proven to be so good at. So I went to my editor and I said, hey, I want to cover blockchain. And he's like, cool, what's blockchain? And so, it was a little bit early. I wasn't by no means the first or anything like that, but and then Wall Street was, and it was also Wall Street was kind of already kicking the tires and trying to figure out what they could do here, because it had the potential to really increase efficiency and save them lots of money. So, there's always going to be a real drive when money's on the line. So that was it. And I just started covering it. And, pretty soon after that, I got into Ethereum, and then the DAO got hacked in 2016, and it was just off to the races. And 2017 came around with the ICO craze. And by then, Bloomberg kind of was forced into the story, and we started covering it in a lot more depth. So I'd already been there for a couple of years, and then it really never stopped, and it just kind of overtook my beat after a while. And that's really all I was doing until I left to start Essential Media last year with my partner, Neil Berkeley.
That's incredible. So how did Out of the Ether come about, or did that come about as you were covering this whole story of, the DAO being hacked, the ICO, like what you just spoke about?
Yeah, so it started as a magazine story for Bloomberg Markets magazine.
Okay.
the editors there every year, they do a heist issue, and they asked me like, "Hey, we know you're covering crypto. You must know a good heist story." And I said, "Oh yeah, I got
Of
one."
course. Of
And
course.
that was the DAO. And
Okay.
so I got to dive into it for a couple months and do some really great reporting. I got to know a lot of the hackers and developers who were kind of working behind the scenes to help mitigate like the hack and make it not worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so wrote the story. It came out, and everyone involved like really liked it. So I think I built up a little bit of trust with them,
Yes.
and I realized, okay, because it's a complicated story, and there's a lot of stuff, so it's not like a super simple thing to do. But
Mm-hmm.
I'd never met like many of these people before, so trust is always a really key factor when you're a reporter. So once that was out, I kind of realized, oh, I could use this story of the DAO hack in a larger context as a kind of narrative tension throughout a book, and then I could also write different chapters about Vitalik Buterin, the inventor of Ethereum, and how he came to invent it, and then how he came to bring people around him to build the thing, and what happened next. And so that was kind of the structure that kind of came to me. I put that in a book proposal, and eventually got a deal. And so
Wow.
that's how it came about. So it all started, with that heist story in 2016.
Wow. So I do have to ask, do you have like Ethereum, are you holding some Ethereum, or are you just kind of more from a reporter's perspective, like, really intrigued by the story, or do you have any of the Ethereum token or coin?
Uh, no, I'm not an investor in it.
Okay.
I own some Ethereum just so that I can do things and figure out, like how does this
On their
NFT work
blockchain.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
but as,
Yeah.
as a reporter, that would have been a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So, kind of strict like that. It's sort of like if you're covering Microsoft for Bloomberg News, you can't own Microsoft shares, right? Because it is
Right.
possible that you're going to move the market price on that, or you're going to get information that no one else knows. So that's the conflict. With something like Ethereum, it's kind of, I think it's a little less, what is it? It's a little harder to make that case. Like, I don't think I'm going to move the price of Ethereum, or I'm not going to find out some information that's going to, I don't know. It's kind of like holding US dollars, in my opinion, but
Yeah.
so yeah, that's the gist of it. But I do have some Ethereum, and I always have, just so that I understand how a wallet works and MetaMask and
Absolutely.
all that stuff. So that because I'm writing about it, I just kind of know how it needs to all kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those listening who may not be familiar, so Bitcoin is basically number one in terms of market cap in the crypto markets. Ethereum sits at number two. They're the two big dogs. Ethereum has basically built a blockchain that allows people to write smart contracts and create all these different, derivatives, so to speak, off of it, like really built out this extensive blockchain. And that's what Matt was covering, is the story of Ethereum and their starting point. They have a really interesting past in terms of, and we'll get into the central in just a second, but I'm curious what your thoughts are, because Vitalik, yes, started it. Charles, I can't even pronounce Hutchinson.
Hoskinson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from
Hoskinson.
Cardano, who's now, or is now with Cardano, started Cardano
Mhm.
blockchain, but was part of the core part of the core team for Ethereum. Any like what like I'm interested in this, and you seem to have a lot of background in Ethereum, so I'm like interested in your thoughts on how that whole thing kind of dispersed. Because
Yeah,
there's another guy too, another guy that was on the core Ethereum team that started another chain.
yeah. Gavin Wood.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
started Polkadot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and Parity. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it is a fascinating story, and that's one
Very
of the things that
fascinating.
really drew me to it, because I knew the characters were so rich, and it was all true, and it
Yeah.
was like real life stuff. But it does kind of have some soap opera moments where, so, Vitalik, yeah, he invented Ethereum. He wrote his white paper, and he
Right.
sent it out to a bunch of people that he knew, because he had been covering Bitcoin for Bitcoin Magazine, which he co-founded with Mihai
Hmm.
Alisi. So he had a pretty good contact list at that point. He sends it out, and everybody's like, "Wow, this is amazing! Let's do this. Let's build this thing." Because
Hmm.
I think at this point, and this would have been 2013. I think some people were kind of coming up to the limits of Bitcoin. It does one thing, but it does it really well. You can send value. It's a permissionless global payment system. So that's amazing. But some people wanted to do more on the blockchain. So now that the kind of cat was out of the bag, they're like, hey, let's see what else we can do. So that was Vitalik's idea. And so basically, kind of randomly, he just started gathering people around him who were very interested and wanted to help him build this thing. So because he knew he couldn't do it alone, so he needed people who had money, obviously, to fund kind of a startup. So there was a couple people like that. There was Anthony Diorio, who had a lot of money from early Bitcoin investing and other businesses that he had. There was Joe Lubin, who had been a software designer at Goldman Sachs and had run a hedge fund, and he came in, but Joe was also very technical and good on the on the protocol kind of level stuff. Then Gavin Wood came in, and he was a great developer and coder. There was Jeff Wilkie, who was another coder that came in. Mihai Alisi, I mentioned him. He was the co-founder of Bitcoin Magazine. He was Vitalik's friend. He came on, and let's see, who am I forgetting? Charles Hoskinson was there, who Anthony Diorio had known. That they were both kind of in the Bitcoin and the blockchain circles in Canada, and so Hoskinson came in. So at first, it all seemed great. Everyone was getting along. There was this excitement, and they were really thinking that they were onto something, because they were. And so, strangely enough, though, within 6 months, factions had formed, and people were getting upset that there were Gavin Wood was upset that there were non-technical people in the leadership roles. He wanted the leadership to be the folks who are actually doing the coding. Charles Hoskinson appointed himself CEO of Ethereum, and he started telling tall tales, and people told me stories about him. A lot of it's in the book, but he tried to pass himself off as Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin. He said that he was in Afghanistan jumping out of Black Hawk helicopters. And, he just kind of had this habit of just really kind of just telling tall tales. And it kind of started rubbing people the wrong way. And so within 6 months, they had to have an all hands on deck meeting in their headquarters in Zug, Switzerland. And Vitalik ended up firing Charles and this other guy. Oh, that's who I missed. It was Amir Chedrit. He was somebody that Vitalik got to know in Israel when he was on doing some traveling before he kind of came up with the Ethereum idea. So those guys got fired. It was a really contentious meeting. One of my favorite details in the book was that night, everyone's in this big house in Zug, but there's 20, 30 people there. So they're all kind of doubling up in rooms to go to bed. And Vitalik and Gavin Wood were in one room with Mihai Alisi and his girlfriend, Roxana, at the time. They're now married. So there's 4 of them in there. They're about to go to bed, and Gavin gets up and locks the door, because it's he doesn't know what's going on, because there was just such a contentious meeting that they had, so he felt kind of a little bit unsafe,
Right.
And so, so within 6 months, the leadership kind of had been reshaped, and they were running out of money, and it was just a really tough time. But everyone was also full speed ahead on Ethereum and what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that when you really get into it and you know the backstory, Ethereum kind of exists in spite of itself. I think it was such a good idea that all this kind of personal drama and a lot of the dead ends and fits and starts that I went through wasn't enough to stop it, because this was just a brilliant idea, and I think the world was ready for it.
Do you think that them having a lot of the fallout that they did in the early stages has helped get them on a solid foundation or solid trajectory? Because for some people who might be coming in very new to the crypto space, it can sound very chaotic and very crazy, and there'd be a lot of fear in terms of investing. And these podcasts don't come out right at the time the current events happen, but at the time of recording that Matt and I are talking, we're a week out from the whole FTX collapse and crazy things in the markets. I'm interested to know what you feel in terms of the future of Ethereum. Do you think that it has a really solid base now that it's already gone through a lot of trials and tribulations in the early days?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, I do.
Okay.
It's always been crazy. Crypto has always been crazy. You go go back to the very beginning. Mt. Gox, that was a That was terrible. Like, that was a shit show. I don't know if I can
Yep.
swear on here, but
No, you can say shit show. We'll say
okay.
it.
Good, because it was a
Yep.
shit show.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
And you had all sorts of other stuff going on
Right.
with altcoins and things, and people getting scammed. But so yeah, it's always been crazy. I think it's always, well, I hope it's not always crazy, but that is definitely par for the course here. And like you mentioned, FTX,
Yeah.
it just went out of business overnight, and
Yep.
no one saw that coming, and it really
Right.
shocked a lot of people because they were basically seen as like the poster boy for like good management, and it turns out that was completely untrue. So
Yeah.
I think, yes, Ethereum is going to continue, and what you see failing around you are either one of two things. It's centralized institutions like FTX or like
Mm-hmm.
Three Arrows Capital or
Mm-hmm.
Luna Terra,
Mm-hmm.
where there's not a lot of transparency, and then things are being, like the books are being cooked, and then that's why they go out of business. Or you're seeing like things that are on top of Ethereum, like the smart contracts, and that have bugs in them and have problems, and so hackers, are always looking for ways to exploit things like that. We've seen bridge hacks this year, like, $600 million in Ronin, right, was taken because it's trying to bridge from the Ronin blockchain to Ethereum. And
Right.
those bridges right now sometimes are the weakest link. And
Yeah.
so, but that's not the Ethereum blockchain, that's the underlying protocol is sound. And I think that was really a great example of this is when Ethereum changed from proof of work to proof of stake in September. And that was a culmination of years of really difficult, complicated research and development. And they pulled it off like so well that it was boring. And it just like switched over in real time to a completely new consensus mechanism, which in my opinion is one of the most amazing technological things I've seen in my lifetime. And I think that's the kind of underlying community that Ethereum has. And I think that's why it's really well positioned for the future. And I don't think Ethereum itself is going to have trouble. It's always the things around it,
Yeah.
that tend to blow up.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah, I know that some people and I see their viewpoint in terms of they see Ethereum kind of like a centralized, not a centralized exchange, but a centralized unit, because where Bitcoin is very, decentralized in there's nobody at the helm running Bitcoin. For Bitcoin to go down, it would have to have like the 51% attack, where 51% of the miners decide, hey, we're going to take this whole thing, which the likelihood of that happening is almost, zero. Where Ethereum does have that centralized core team that's kind of building, and should they decide, hey, we're taking this down, or we're going sideways, so I guess from my perspective, I see where people see those things, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. But I also do see how other blockchains are built in very similar fashions with like Ethereum, where they do have their core development team. But
Yeah, I would say, I think, I think Bitcoin is the standard for decentralization,
right,
and there's absolutely nobody running it. The protocol is just kind of maintaining itself, basically.
right,
Ethereum, though, let's not forget, they have now seven different clients that run Ethereum. So there's 7 different languages that you can use, or that they've used to build Ethereum. So if you wanted to take down Ethereum, you'd have to take down all 7 of those clients, and they've done this on purpose because, let's say 1 or 2 of those or 3 get attacked or they just fail.
yeah,
The Ethereum keeps going, so it's still like running on different. So it's
okay,
got a lot of backups in a sense, So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then
yeah. I didn't
there's a
know
lot of,
that. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then there's a lot of, now it's on a validator system. So it's no longer miners because it's
right,
proof of stake. But,
right,
those validators are spread around all around the world. One thing that is concerning is that some staking services have come out, like Coinbase has one, and there's a couple of others, where, because you need 32 ETH to become a validator on a new system. So if you have 32 ETH, you can do it on like your home computer, basically. But if you don't, but you still want to get involved, you can join a staking pool and say you've got 5 ETH. So you join it,
you
and
put it
that's
in.
you just put it in, and you kind of like, you get a share of the rewards, commensurate to how much you put in, minus fees, of course. And those are sort of concentrating a little bit. Like I think there's somewhere around 40% of the validators are coming from pools. So that is a little bit concerning to folks, because if, say, the Department of Justice comes and says, hey, we don't, or we need all these transaction records, for, we think like Tornado Cash is being used to launder North Korean money. When you have a centralized place like that, like Coinbase, like all that information is there. So it kind of presents, a way of, like, it's not as decentralized as it could be. So that's something that people are a little concerned about. But I think folks are trying to encourage people as much as possible to just run a node, run a validator on your own computer, and let's, like, the faithful, like let's keep this decentralized and out of the reach of governments or corporations that might want to, have some kind of ill will towards the network. So I think that's something that's being worked on.
Right. Very, very fascinating. I know when you say 32 ETH, for those of you who may not know, so ETH price, I think if I looked at it last, was like 1,200. So it could be like, to start to become a validator would be about like 35K. Don't quote me on those numbers. The price fluctuations come out, but that could be a substantial investment for a single person. So I understand why people do the pools, but I could see where they could be problematic in that sense. So
yeah. As we've seen, like with FTX, everything that's centralized seems to be, kind of a danger point. It's like, that's the whole ethos here for why we're so fascinated by this, is that it's a decentralized way of doing things, and it's more democratic in a sense. It's more like the barriers to entry are very low, and everyone can get involved with this. So I think that's what people should always try to keep in mind, and that's always, hopefully the goal here.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell us about Decentral. It's a media company. I checked out the website. I was like, wow, this is really cool. I want to just say this. This is what on their website it says: telling the stories of founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. And you guys are doing this through films, documentary series, journalism, that kind of stuff. Like, tell us more about that. It's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So this sort of came out of my book. So the book had come out, and several months later, this filmmaker named Neil Berkeley got in touch, and he wanted to option the book to turn it into a documentary series. And so I was like, great, finally somebody who actually has connections, and not my mom saying, oh, this should be made into a movie, right?
Thanks, Mom. You're my biggest supporter.
Yeah, you are. Unfortunately, you don't have an agent, or don't know anything about movie making. So we just kind of hit it off, Neil and I, and we understood, like, pretty soon that we like to tell stories in a similar way. He's doing it in film. I'm doing it with the written word. And we just got to talking, and we didn't think that, or we thought there was a kind of a gap in some of the ways that this stuff was being reported. And I'm sorry, Brooke, I'm hearing an echo. Do you want to, is that something?
Is it still there?
When I talk, I can hear myself again. Now I can screw up the recording. Just started, which is weird.
Yeah, now it looks like the internet. I'll edit this, but it looks like the internet connection is. Let me check the Wi-Fi really quick. Okay, is it back?
When I talk, let me see. No, now it's gone. So that's
it's
good.
Gone. Okay, yeah, it looked like the internet connection went down for a second. I apologize for that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just glad. I didn't want to. That would be bad if it wasn't usable. But I can just restart from what you asked me, right? So you're asking about Essential. Yeah. Okay. So it kind of came from my book. So my book had come out, and then several months later, this guy Neil Berkeley got in touch with me, and he's a filmmaker, and he wanted to option the book to turn it into a documentary. And so I was like, yay, finally somebody from Hollywood, not my mom, saying, oh, this should be a movie, right? So that was nice to hear. And so Neil and I just kind of figured out quickly that we both like to tell stories in the same sort of way. He does it in the film. I do it with writing. but we really liked it's all character driven, and that's the way I really approached my book, because I knew this is a complicated story and it's like got a lot of twists and turns, and I really need to tell this story through the characters and make them human, and so that you can kind of relate to them and follow along.
Mm-hmm.
So Neil and I take that same approach, whether he's he's doing film and I'm doing it in writing, and then we were kind of looking around and we thought that with all the coverage that's out there about crypto and Web3, we didn't feel that like the people were getting enough attention. Like there's so many fascinating, crazy, smart, weird people, and they come from all walks of life. And these are the folks that I got to know writing the book. I got to know them writing for it about at Bloomberg. But didn't give me much license to like get into like their profiles and stuff. Bloomberg is sort of like really kind of straight and narrow, like what's the breaking news or what's the story here. So I just wanted to really start writing about these people, and so that's the whole kind of genesis of Decentral. And we're just like telling the stories, the backstories, like where did you come from? Tell me about your childhood. What were you doing before you found crypto? It's kind of like your first question. Like,
Yeah.
where did you get into? How did you get into Web3?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's been our approach, and I think it's it's getting well received. I think we're trying to add a little more news to it, and we're trying to add things that people want more on a daily basis. But I think we've really laid the ground work for just really kind of highlighting the folks that are behind the scenes here a lot of the time. I think a lot of the reporting on this area is kind of technical, and it usually tends to be about the technology or prices or what's the latest NFT thing, and it's not necessarily about the people behind that are making it all happen. So that's what we're really trying to do. And we've got podcasts, and we've got we're working on film stuff and the writing side. So that's all kind of the general direction that we're heading in.
That's fascinating and awesome. So are you guys looking to create like almost kind of like a subscription model, where someone subscribes to like Bloomberg, and then they get the articles and the access to the films and those kind of things? Or how are you guys creating like a business model around telling these stories and building readership or viewership?
Yeah, right now it's all free.
Okay.
We're out there just trying to build an audience and get people to get eyeballs and ears to listen and watch and read.
Yeah.
And then down the line, I think that's kind of one of the options that we're exploring. There's going to be ad revenue as well coming in, but we're not there yet. It's still, we celebrated our 1 year anniversary in October.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Luckily, we got a seed round of investment in the summer, and so we've got some money in the bank, and we're just kind of trying to build it slowly but surely and see where it takes us. But I think, especially on the film side, I don't feel like a lot of people are doing that. And if we can kind of get that going and break out into there, I think that's has a lot of potential.
I agree.
Yeah, and that would be a lot of fun to do. So that's kind of the business plan at the moment. It's not too complicated.
No, not at all. I from my standpoint, I'm listening to it and I'm like, okay, like, that's it. It's really interesting. I'm curious if you guys are gonna do a Web3 type business model with it. Obviously, subscription based. If someone's using fiat dollars, to buy into their monthly subscription, are you guys going to do it to where maybe you build on chain something to where people can pay in Ethereum for that subscription?
I think, we definitely want to use all of the tools and all of the availability that Web3 gives us. So yes, and we've toyed with the idea, like, should we be a DAO? Should we try to raise money that way, or should we do some kind of NFT drop? But we're just kind of taking it slowly but surely, because first and foremost, we see ourselves as a kind of journalism operation, both on documentary film and in the writing and podcasting. So, but that's one thing I love about this is, like, in my book, I had a special edition printed, and there's only 1,000 copies that ever came out, and those can be you can make those into an NFT. So I like experimenting with this stuff and using it as well as writing about it, which I think is really fun.
Totally. That's so cool. That's so cool. I could just I see, just a lot of potential there. Even people being able to, as you do transition more into like taking payment via the Web3 blockchain world, where people can have like these are your first founders edition people and they get lifetime access to Decentral
Mhm.
and because they're the NFT holder, and then they can sell it on the secondary market if they don't want to get the information anymore, and someone else can have that pass. But the
Yeah.
very cool, there's a lot of different options and ideas and things that can happen as a result.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we're putting our money where our mouth is. Like
Yeah,
you might as well just like
yeah.
dive into this thing, not just write about it, but be a participant in it as well as
R-
much as possible.
Right. Right. Very cool. And education in this space and having people like be able to connect with the characters, you said the, characters, it really starts to create a sense of trust and understanding of different aspects of blockchain technology or different aspects of Web3 that, like you said, a lot of what is being reported, YouTube, you know, other podcast episodes and things like that are all just about, okay, what do you think the price is going to be? It's
Yeah.
a lot of trading jargon, and unless you're like an experienced trader, it means nothing to you. So you don't really learn about this space in the way that you would through your method, through your
Yeah, I was
public.
interviewing somebody the other day, and they put it really well in terms of like they said the people who tend to like crypto, first of all, don't know much about risk and risk management, and they've all got dollar signs in their eyes, right? So a lot of
Oh my
fast money.
god.
So you put those two things together, and I think that's pretty accurate because a lot of people come to this and think they're going to get rich,
That's why I'm
and they
laughing. It's so
yeah,
accurate, Matt. It's so
and so
accurate.
yeah, I thought so too. So that's why people get rugged all the time, and that's why there's so many like
Totally.
ongoing scams, and people are gullible
Totally.
because they think they're just on the cusp of making those millions of dollars. And you really got to slow down. You really got to do your own research and figure this
Yeah.
stuff out because the people who are scamming you know that that's the audience. It's the people with
Yeah.
dollar signs in their eyes with
Yeah.
no idea of risk management, and that's like
Right.
shooting fish in a barrel. So yeah,
Right.
I agree. I think education and just trying to do as much as possible to tell people like these are like the great things out here that are now possible that have never been possible before, but you have to be careful because there's real money at stake here. Like
Absolutely.
with
Yeah.
FTX, I've been saying this for years to people, like, do not leave your money on an exchange because why are you trusting that exchange? Like you need to get your own wallet, you need to put it on the blockchain, and you need to have that private key yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not able to do that, maybe you shouldn't be in this space right now,
Right.
because
Right.
if, you know, and so that's the thing. You see FTX go bankrupt overnight, and like if you had money there, it's gone. You're probably going to
It's
be tied up in bankruptcy proceedings for years. And it's
yeah.
like you should, you got to take care of your own stuff here. Don't
Yep.
trust anybody else to do it.
Right. Right. No, I mean we live in a culture right now with the internet where people can easily click like forgot password and get a recovery code and whatever. And so there is this lack of understanding of like not your keys, not your coins. And I've talked extensively about this on so many different episodes about, hey, I've done short YouTube reels and things like that to help educate people. And now in the aftermath of all this FTX, I've had so many people messaging me going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, first off, I've never transacted with FTX, and second of all, I use an exchange to purchase my tokens or my coins, and then I get out of there. Like I'm not in
Yeah,
there for a long time, and so I appreciate you guys being worried, but I'm okay. Like,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Exchanges definitely have a place. Like they're very,
totally,
they're
yeah.
absolutely vital to the system.
Yeah.
But don't leave your money there. Don't leave your coins there. Like,
I
get it
just had
off.
this a random analogy pop up into my mind, but it would be like as if you go to Target and you purchase all these things for your home or clothing or whatever you buy at Target and you just leave your bag, you pay for everything, but you just leave it there sitting in the store. Like, why would you
Yeah,
do that? Like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
bring that stuff home with you. Same thing.
Mhm,
You buy at the exchange, you bring it home with you.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So very cool, Matt. It's been such a fun conversation. I love what you're doing. How do people, you said it's free right now. Do they just go to the Decentral website and like subscribe to getting the weekly newsletter? Like what does it look like for somebody who wants to continue and learn and get more from what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website's a great place. It's
Okay.
decential.io. So DECENTIAL.io.
Mm-hmm.
You can subscribe to our newsletter. We've got two. We do like a weekly Web3 roundup where we're taking stories from around the web and different
Cool.
publications, just kind of like, if you missed this, here it is. And then we do a weekly, um, we send out everything we've published that week on Saturdays. So if you just want to check it out that way, you can. We're on Twitter at Decentral Media. I'm on Twitter at Matt Leising. We're on LinkedIn. Let's see. I mentioned the special edition of my book. You can find my book pretty much anywhere, online, Amazon, all that stuff. If you want to look at the special edition, it's at outoftheether.net, and so you can buy one through there if that's your jam. And I'd love it to, I'd love to see some subscribers and stuff, and just have everybody listening check us out.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to link all those places that you are at. I'll put those in the show notes, making it easy for you as a listener to really connect and be engaged. Because hey, if you're new to this space and you're listening to these episodes and you're just like, I can't figure this all out, this is a great place to really be able to figure it all out without a lot of the jargon that a lot of these newsletters, I'm part of tons of newsletters, and I understand the words, so it's not necessarily jargon to me, but I can see how a newbie would be. So definitely connect with Matt, definitely connect with Decentral. Any final words that you want to say before we bring the train into the station?
No, this has been a pleasure, Brooke. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. It's been so fun. So great. Well, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are riding the ride with us today, as we pull up into the station, be sure to exit to your right, and we will see you on the next one. You made it. Congratulations. That wasn't so bad, was it? I hope you laughed and learned a little bit more about this Web3 universe and how simple and fun it can really be. Would you be so kind as to leave us a review and share it with your friends and family? It would mean so much to get this out to more people as we embark on the greatest transfer of wealth that has ever happened in human history. Can't wait to see you on the next one.